Inception's smartest trick is also its biggest lie. It treats a dream like a place you can share, map, and schedule, like a multiplayer simulation running on the brain.
Christopher Nolan released Inception in 2010 and framed it as a heist,
but the vault is a sleeping mind. Cobb is an extractor, someone who steals secrets from targets while they dream. The harder job is the reverse. Cobb's team tries to plant an idea in Robert Fisher so deeply that Fisher believes it came from himself. That premise lands because the movie commits to rules. Dreams have architecture. They have physics. They have defenses. They even have time, stretching as you go deeper. The team stacks dreams inside dreams, and then builds suspense around synchronized wake-ups, called kicks. A van falling off a bridge becomes the metronome for a whole nested operation. Now, if you ask what science this requires, the answer's split in two. Some parts are surprisingly aligned with what we know about dreaming. Other parts need a kind of mind interface that is basically magic. Start with the biggest leap, the shared dream itself. In the film, everyone hooks into a suitcase-sized device through simple intravenous tubes. They get sedated, and then they all arrive inside the same dream world. They talk, improvise, and coordinate in real time. That implies something staggering. The device would have to read rich, shifting mental content from one brain and write compatible content into several other brains, with almost no delay. Think about the bandwidth hidden in a vivid dream. Visual scenes, spatial layout, faces, voices, body sensations, emotions, narrative context, and memory fragments. Real neuroscience does not treat dream imagery like an internal movie file you can stream. Dreaming is a complex conscious state. It is generated within an individual brain, not broadcast like radio. To make Inception work literally, you need a brain-to-brain interface with extraordinary precision. Not just recording, not just stimulation. You would need continuous translation between neural patterns and lived experience across multiple people. And you would need bidirectional updating, because the characters respond to each other's gestures and surprises. That is why the passive device, as shown, is the film's least realistic engineering claim. It is also the one the story most depends on. Next comes the idea that a dream can be pre-designed. Ariadne, the architect, draws a city or a corridor, and that built environment later appears inside someone else's dream. The target supplies the population, while the team supplies the SEP. It is a gorgeous metaphor for how we scaffold experiences. But biologically, it assumes you can upload and constrain spatial layouts inside another person's sleeping brain, and then keep those layouts stable. They drift with emotion, attention, memory, and spontaneous neural activity. Even lucid dreamers, when they gain awareness, usually do not get perfect control. Inception turns lucidity into architectural command. It pushes the high control edge of the dream experience and then treats it as dependable technology. The film's most famous rule is also its most game-like one. Dream time dilates predictably with depth. Minutes up top become hours below. Hours become years in limbo. The key word is predictable. The team plans like a military unit because the conversion factor is reliable. In real life, dreams can feel temporally strange. You can wake up convinced you lived a long sequence during a short sleep, but that is subjective distortion, not an operational clock. Inception needs a nested scaling law, almost like relativity, except tied to dream depth instead of gravity or speed. There is also a hard constraint the movie mostly ignores. Brains run on metabolism. Neural activity still takes physical time and physical energy. Even if experience feels stretched, the tissue doing the work is not detached from biology. Limbo pushes this to the limit. Cobb and Mal live what feels like decades, building cities and growing old, while the body is only asleep for hours. The film gives us the trauma of decades, without the biology of decades. Then there is the sedative, which has to perform miracles. Yusuf's compound keeps people asleep through crashes, gunfire, drowning, and pain. It also preserves lucid reasoning, speech, planning, and coordinated action. At the same time, it selectively allows one specific kind of sensation, the feeling of falling, to propagate as a kick and wake everyone up on cue. Those requirements pull in opposite directions. Drugs that strongly suppress arousal tend to alter cognition broadly. Sedation, anesthesia, and sleep are not the same thing, but they all shift memory, responsiveness, and coordination. Inception needs a chemical that is deep and safe, yet crisp and controllable. It needs no waking from injury, but yes, waking from a timed vestibular trigger. In other words, it needs the language of sleep, plus the control panel of a futuristic operating system for consciousness. The movie also literalizes psychological resistance in a way that feels intuitive, even when it is wrong. Targets generate projections, dream people who notice intruders and attack them. Fisher's mind has been trained to resist extraction, so his projections behave like armed security. Crowds turn their heads in unison. Soldiers appear. The subconscious becomes an immune system with guns. As neuroscience, that is shaky. The brain can generate dream characters, and dreams can include threat and pursuit. But the film assumes there is an internal agent that can reliably distinguish authentic mental content from foreign intrusion. It also suggests you can train that agent, so the sleeping mind runs counterintelligence against dream hackers. That makes for great action scenes and a clean visualization of anxiety and defense. It is not how cognitive processes are actually distributed. Now for the flip side, the ways Inception earns its emotional realism. First, it insists that dreams are experiences, not random static. Dreams have perspective, mood, and narrative force. Cobb's guilt over Mal does not show up as a vague symbol. It shows up as an intrusive presence, emotionally charged, and capable of derailing his intentions. That tracks with a serious view of dreaming as a form of consciousness. Dream consciousness can be bizarre and still involve a self, moving through a world. Second, the film's theory of persuasion is sharper than it looks. Inception is not simple mind control. Cobb keeps repeating that the idea has to be simple, and it has to feel self-generated. So the team does not merely tell Fisher, break up the company. They build an experience that ties the choice to an unresolved father-son wound and to a feeling of liberation. That is closer to how beliefs actually stick. Human belief is not just propositions in storage. It is tangled with identity, emotion, memory, social meaning, and agency. People adopt ideas more readily when those ideas fit their self-story and when they feel like the author. The movie exaggerates the precision outsiders could have in engineering that process, but the intuition, that emotional salience matters, is solid. Third, the kick is one of the better bridges between cinema and physiology. Inception assumes the sleeping brain is not sealed off from the body. External sensations can leak in and shape a dream. Sounds, touch, temperature, posture, and vestibular cues can be incorporated into dream narrative. The film makes that incorporation absurdly synchronized across layers. Still, the basic direction is right. Dreams often remix what the body is sensing. Finally, there is a deeper realism running under the gadgets. The film understands that the self is fragile under altered consciousness. Cobb's true danger is not getting shot in a dream. It is losing trust in his own reality testing. The spinning top is a crude symbol for a serious problem. How does a mind know which world it is in, when perception, memory, and emotion can all mislead? That fear is not confined to fiction. Altered states, hallucinations, and certain neurological conditions can disturb the relationship between what you perceive and what is real. Inception turns that vulnerability into noir melodrama, but it points at a genuine fact about minds. Consciousness is not a perfect witness. It is a storyteller, doing its best with limited signals. So where does that leave the movie's science? As literal neuroscience and engineering, the shared dream device and the clean time math collapse under scrutiny. As a model of how ideas take root and how emotion shapes belief and identity, it lands with surprising accuracy. If you remember one thing, make it this. Inception is not realistic about entering someone else's dream, but it is realistic about how easily we can be entered by our own.